good morning, everyone. It is Christy. I hope you are doing well, wherever it is, whenever it is you are. Hi, I see, oh my gosh, 6 o'clock in the morning, Haruka. Wow. You guys can't see yourselves. I should probably put you on screen if I'm going to do that. Yeah, so let's say hi to everyone who's in the chat there first. Transgamer Girl, hello. Lucky Wanderer, good to see you again. Sib Wolf, A to the K, hello, A to the K into his. Who else we got in there? John Doe. Hello, John. I'm going to move this out of the way. I can see you guys a bit better. DNF fan, or DN fan, John Doe. Yeah, so, hello. And welcome to the show. I want to do two things on this show. The first is I want to kind of continue on with the issues that we were looking at when I read out the case from the 3rd District Court of Appeals, and that has to do with the basis of voter fraud and the evidence that one needs to provide in order for a court to find that an election has been tampered with and that some sort of relief is in order. And then the other thing I want to talk about is this sorry, I've got a lot of thoughts running through my head, and while one set of thoughts is getting ready to be discussed, another one is like queuing itself up, and sometimes I get lost in the buffering. I want to break down my remake of the Frankenstein versus the Space Monster, where I did a parody cut of the original film with really two things in mind. One, it's a criticism of like how the original film was edited, which I thought was pretty lame. The other thing was, well, I mean, here's the thing. It was edited in the aesthetics of its time, and I think that it was interesting to be able to work with it to make some parts of it a bit more modern. But then there's also just like the educational part of working with something that's really bad and understanding what makes it bad and what you can do to fix that. And I thought it might be kind of fun for you guys to see what some of the thought process was, or at least compare, like both in terms of the technical things that I did, but also narratively, because I changed the story of it as well. If you haven't seen it, it is available for some places, for some people. We can watch it. So getting back to this discussion of voter fraud, Haruka in the chat makes a very good point. I think we discussed this on the happy hour, but yeah, Republicans keep going on and on about how there's all this sort of voter fraud, and it's always the Democrats. It's always the liberals who are doing this. It's always the people of color who are doing this. They're the ones who are trying to cheat white people out of their votes. And that's, how much is that really the case? Not really. I mean, really not really. Sorry, I'm going to move myself over. No, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to move myself a bit more centered. Ooh. Slide over. There is. So and when they kind of like are constantly wagging their fingers at us as, oh, you cheating dirty liberals, you don't care about democracy. What you end up finding is plenty of instances where Republicans are the ones doing the voter fraud. And in this case, an attorney, I should say, from Florida is at the center of a new state investigation after elections officials said he recently attempted to register to vote in Georgia and instructed other Florida Republicans how to do it. So the thing is, you kind of need to actually live in the state where you vote. You can't just sort of like temporarily adjust your address while continuing to reside in another state. Now, would it be illegal, or unethical or something for someone to like physically pick up their lives and move to Georgia for 6 months in order to vote? While it's probably unethical, I don't know how you could make that illegal, because there are people who would like legitimately for their work or would temporarily move. So I don't know that you could distinguish between people. Like if you're going to move to Georgia to work on a campaign for 8 months, you're a resident by the residency requirements, so you should be able to vote there. But I don't think that's what you really had. Right. So let's have a look at what this situation is. Bill Price is seen in a now deleted Facebook Live video speaking to the Bay County GOP members in Florida on November 7th. It was about a half hour after the election was called for the Joe Biden-Kamala Harris ticket. Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger confirmed the video is being investigated and released the following statement Tuesday, quote, "Make no mistake, individuals who attempt to undermine the integrity of Georgia's elections will be investigated and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law," said Raffensperger. Quote, "Those who move to Georgia just to vote in the Senate runoffs with no intention of staying are committing a felony that is punishable with jail time and hefty fines. They will be found, they will be investigated, and they will be punished." Yeah, exactly. Popcorn. So much popcorn. Channel 2 investigative reporter Nicole Carr recorded the nearly hour-long video at the center of the investigation Tuesday afternoon, shortly before it was deleted. Price begins by sharing his legal expertise with a crowd, telling them lawsuits challenging the presidential race are likely to fail. Quote, "I'd love to tell you that there are legal avenues for success in the courts, but as a realist and as a lawyer myself, I know that's just not going to happen," unquote, he said. Instead, Price encouraged the crowd to work toward a, quote, billion-man, unquote, march at the state capitol, show up in Atlanta on Election Day, and move if they can do it. Quote, "We absolutely have to hold the Senate, and we have to start fighting back, and we have to do whatever it takes," Price said in the video. "And if that means changing your address for the next 2 months, so be it. I'm doing that. I'm moving to Georgia, and I'm going to fight, and I want you to all fight with me," unquote. Price told the group he's moved to his brother's address in Hiram, Georgia, in order to register to vote in the January runoff. He repeats and spells his brother's name and address as members of the group jotted down. Were they all going to, register their addresses at his brother's house? Had it suddenly become, a complete, hippie commune for Florida Republicans? Sorry, let me change my camera here a little bit. Oh, wrong direction. I realized that I was slightly off center from where I was sitting. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. They can be heard mumbling the address in the background while some write. Quote, "Can we truly register at that address?" One woman asks. "Sure," Price answers, adding they have a plan to show a move, suggesting they have mail sent there. Wow. Quote, "And it can be anywhere in the state of Georgia you can register?" Another woman asks. Quote, "So if you've got cousins, dogs, cats that live somewhere else, it doesn't need to be one particular county?" Unquote. Quote, "Yep," Price answers. "This is going to be a statewide election on January 5th. I'm going to be voting for Kelly Loeffler." Question mark? In the recording, his voice indicates a question as he mispronounces the senator's last name. And David Perdue. Got the man right, though. That's important. "It can be done online, or you can request your ballot at your new address in Georgia by mail," Price said. "You just go to the Secretary of State's website for Georgia and register to vote there." Quote, "If I need a driver's license, I'm going to get a driver's license," unquote, he said. Quote, "If they need mail, I'm going to have mail there," unquote. "We have to win that election in Georgia." Again, I'm quoting. It's really annoying to have to say quote, unquote all the time. But anyway, quote, "We have to win that election in Georgia, and I'm moving to my brother's house in Hiram, Georgia, and registering to vote," Price says, "and we are going to win that election in January. That's what needs to be done. If you don't want to do it, fine. Might as well move to Venezuela now." Why? None of them speak Spanish. Why would they move to Venezuela? They can't speak the native language, and they find it very offensive to have to learn a second language. Oh my God. Quote, "Get used to that lifestyle because that's what's coming." Republicans are constantly threatening this, just like the NRA constantly threatens that Democrats are going to try to take away your guns. And yet, in literally 60 years, where we've had Democratic presidents, even House and Senate being run by the Democrats, no guns have been taken, other than from people who commit felonies who aren't supposed to have guns. And even those people end up having possession of guns more often than not because the local police don't want the bother of trying to disarm someone with a felony. So It's just scare tactics for the brainless. All right. When Carr reached Price by email Tuesday evening, he denied he was serious about the move. Quote, "Thanks for reaching out. I did not change my voter registration, and I don't have 2 million roommates." Unquote. Price wrote, referencing a joke he told at one point during the talk about having millions join him in Georgia. Quote, "But if my humorous comments..." Humorous? Really? Humorous? Oh yeah, you can just register that. People were writing down his brother's address. "But if my humorous comments bring attention to the massive and widespread voter fraud in Georgia, I would submit to you that's a good thing." Dude, you are the source of the massive and widespread voter fraud in Georgia. That is you. That's you committing a crime or stating your intention to commit a crime and getting other people to do the same criming that you want to do is not bringing attention to massive, widespread voter fraud. It is massive and widespread voter fraud. Oh my God. But Channel 2 confirmed Price registered to vote the day after he made the speech using his brother Hiram's address and swearing to an affidavit that he was a Georgia resident and eligible to vote. Wow. This is, yeah. He didn't just try to register, he did. And he gave an affidavit to that effect as well. He swore under penalty of perjury. Oh, wow. Swearing to an affidavit that he was a Georgia resident and eligible to vote. Quote, "When we clearly know that he is not," unquote. That's a little bit of a clause. "When we clearly know that he is not, ... or ... when we," like, just incomplete clause, just random clause. But I think we get the, yeah, that's kind of awkwardly written because it does follow on from "to an affidavit he was a Georgia resident and eligible to vote," and like "when we clearly know that he is not." They should have been, yeah, anyway, you get what I mean there. Holden said Wednesday that Price's voter registration is in pending status. Her office was preparing to write him and ask him to bring in his driver's license to cure and complete the registration since the information was provided last month. By Monday morning, Holden had been contacted by state elections investigators who had flagged Price's Georgia registration address. They shared the video with her. She said the elections board will hold a special called meeting next week to make sure Price's registration does not become active. I've never heard of this. I've never heard of a situation where people have actually had to have a meeting to make sure somebody didn't vote. This is phenomenal. I mean, seriously. I mean, if you want to say about, how difficult it is for the Trump campaign to find voter fraud, look how easy it is to actually, investigate a situation. Now, granted, he had his, he did make the video, so he helped a lot. But, if there are a sudden bunch of new registrations, you can follow up on those and make sure those people are, but they didn't, this is because there wasn't that much fraud. I mean, like I said, all elections have some sort of problems with votes, individual votes, but that doesn't mean that the entire election result has been determined by fraudulent activities. All right, Holden, a Republican, told Carr Price's intent was clear in the video, and it was disturbing to hear him instruct the group and say he planned to return to Florida on January 6th. Quote, "What kind of message is this sending out to our children?" Oh, think of the children. They really went there. They went like, "Oh, think of the children." I'm sorry, but that's ridiculous. Kids don't care about voter fraud. Your grandkids don't care about voter fraud. I mean, grown-ups who can vote care about voter fraud. But the whole think of the children and the grandchildren. Oh man. Oh, I wish they would apply that to the like ICE detention centers, concentration camps, torture centers. They're going to start measuring everything by think of the children. Oh, okay. So what kind of message is this sending to our children and our grandchildren and our neighbors that if you don't win an election, that you can just go out and steal one, unquote, Holden asked, quote, and that's absolutely unacceptable here in the state of Georgia, unquote. Carr stopped by Price's brother's home on Wednesday. He confirmed he'd been contacted by state investigators but had not seen the video. The whole thing was just tongue-in-cheek. Wait a minute, but did he fill out the form? So then it's not tongue-in-cheek, is it? Frederick Price said of his brother's remarks, there's nothing here. Quote, some of it was tongue-in-cheek, unquote, Carr said. Quote, the other was specific instructions, lacking a close quote. No, Price answered. It wasn't all a joke, Carr said. Okay, but no, Price answered. Okay, thank you, sir, Carr said. This, like, what the hell? WSB TV 2 News, you've got somebody who need to check your editorial stuff, because why would you even put in that conversation? Why don't you just describe it? That was like that was just weirdly set up, and you're missing close quotes right here. So your editor person, see, and here's your close quotes, but after Price answered, and then that's supposed to go up. You guys need a better editor. You can hire me. I'm very cheap comparatively. You can hire me as a contractor. All right. In a Wednesday afternoon statement, Georgia's Deputy Secretary of State, Jordan Fuchs, I know how to say that name because I speak German. It means fox, Jordan Fox in German. Fuchs confirmed the office would be exploring the felony charges tied to fraudulent voter registration in Georgia. For weeks, Georgia officials have warned that registering to vote with no attempt to stay in Georgia can be punishable by a felony charge that can carry up to a 10-year sentence and a $100,000 fine. Wow. Quote, this isn't California. What? Unquote, said Fuchs. Quote, we actually investigate and seek to prosecute individuals who try to vote here illegally. Ooh, look at you comparing yourself. Like, why all this shade at California? Where's this hate coming from? Yeah, you're like right-wing bigot. Like, what is, yeah, you've got actually Republicans committing crimes in a Republican state. And you want to diss California? Try dissing Florida. It's just, lazy. Lazy. WSB TV is Action 2, Action News. I know, but they need an editor. We actually investigate and seek to prosecute individuals who try to vote here illegally. Our system is built to prevent this behavior. We seek to prosecute to the full extent of the law. Breaking the law. Carr reached out to the Bay County GOP to see if the group advised members that Price was under investigation and his suggestions regarding temporary moves to vote is illegal. As of airtime Wednesday, Channel 2 has not received a response. Oh, man, that is funny. That is damn funny. No, that's what voter fraud looks like. You got a person saying a thing on tape. I mean, that's very helpful to have it, but yeah. What are you gonna do when they make it that easy? Honestly, that easy. There's the guy. There's the white dude who's getting investigated now. Not liberals. You know what I mean by liberal in the American sense. American politics spectrum. Not people of color. Rich white dude committing voter fraud. Right. I'm going to have a sip of my coffee because it's morning. And I've got my cologne mug here going on today. Let's see. Nice look at that. My cologne Starbucks mug. Basically is a soup bowl with a handle on it, which is exactly the size of coffee cup I need. Righty-dighty. Before we get to the director's cut discussion of my parody cut of Frankenstein versus a space monster, let us just have a little follow-on look from the video I did, the recorded video, reading out the decision on the Third Court of Appeals decision. That could be slightly redundant, but the Third Court of Appeals decision on the Rudy Giuliani accusations of voter fraud, and basically just rip them apart and explain it. And I think with those situations, it's difficult to understand how the court reached its conclusion without having an understanding of what a court case that had actual evidence looks like. Because you can say there's a lack of evidence here, but if you don't know what sufficient evidence looks like, that just doesn't have a meaningful metric. The real name of the real local meteorologist is Flip Spiceland. Oh my god. Oh, that is funny. And so to give you a sense of what that should look like, or what it could look like, and should implies like normatively. But here is an example of Marks v. Stinson, which is a case of voter fraud. Hold on just one quick second. I'm not going to cough in your ear. Right. This is a situation where someone was found guilty of voter fraud, and the situation is described in the court case, so I'm not going to read out. Basically, you've got the opinion. It was argued in 1994 that it was, okay, Bruce Marks pro se, never a good idea, and a whole bunch of other people, and they'll read out who the main actors are. Start with this. Hey, Sean House. Good morning and welcome. Opinion of the court. We'll see how far we get, because this might be a long decision. And once again, just like I did with the other opinion, I'm not going to read out every state statute, and I'm going to try to focus on the flow of the narrative rather than detailing the exact legal basis for every single decision, because you guys can go back and look those up if you're interested. Opinion of the court. Stapleton Circuit Judge. After an evidentiary hearing on the plaintiff's motion for a preliminary injunction, the district court in this case found that certain officials responsible for conducting an election in the secondary senatorial district of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania had conspired with one of the two candidates to cause numerous illegally obtained absentee ballots to be cast. Based on that finding, the district court issued a preliminary injunction which enjoined the candidate who had participated in the conspiracy from exercising any of the authority of the office of state senator, and directed the Board of Elections to certify the results of the election based solely on the votes cast at the voting machines. The effect of this preliminary injunction was to require the decertification of the candidate previously declared to be the winner and the certification of his opponent. In this appeal from the preliminary injunction, we are asked to declare that the district court abused its discretion by refusing to abstain and fashioning an unreasonable interim remedy. Sorry, I'm talking a lot for the first time today. My voice is getting a bit scratchy. Okay. You can see here that they have like specific instances of a conspiracy. They know who the actors are, they know what the effects were, and they had very specific remedies for this. Introduction. Republican Bruce Marks and Democrat William Stinson ran in an election conducted on November 2nd, 1993 to represent Pennsylvania's 2nd senatorial district. This election was held to fill the remaining portion of a term expiring in December 1994, and was of particular significance to both Republicans and Democrats because control of the Pennsylvania Senate was at stake. According to the certified results of the Philadelphia County Commissioners, sitting as the County Board of Elections, the board, of the 38,818 votes cast 876 on the voting machines on the election day, 691 were cast for Marks, while 19,000 sorry, I did it, just coughed in your face. Sorry, I'm gonna have to bump this up a little bit. This be easier, much easier to read. Yes, Marks jokes, yes. 19,691 were cast for Marks, while 19,127 were cast for Stinson. However, of the 1,700, the 67 absentee ballots cast, Marks received only 371 votes, while Stinson received 1,396. When all votes were added together, Stinson won by a final count of 20,523 to 20,062. The board therefore certified Stinson as the winner of the election, and he was subsequently sworn in as a Pennsylvania state senator. Marks the Republican Senate Committee and 8 named voters who reside in the 2nd Senatorial District, 2 of whom are residents who voted at the polling places in the election at issue, and 6 of whom are Latino residents of this same district who voted by absentee ballot, brought this suit alleging violations of the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act in connection with the election. The defendants are Stinson, the Stinson campaign, unnamed individuals who worked for the Stinson campaign, the board, and the board members Margaret M. Targultonilolo, sure, why not, John F. Kane, and Alexander Z. Talmadge, Jr., defendants, are joined as appellants by 10 interveners who are voters who legally cast absentee ballots and who allege that the preliminary injunction disenfranchised them. Under Pennsylvania law, a qualified elector may vote by absentee ballot if he or she is inter alia absent from the Commonwealth or county of residence, quote, because his duties, occupation, or business require him to be elsewhere during the entire period the polls are open, unquote, or is physically unable to go to the polls. An elector who wishes to vote by absentee ballot must submit to the appropriate Board of Elections an absentee ballot application, including a statement that the elector expects to be out of the county on Election Day, or that the elector is physically unable to go to the polls, with a declaration stating the nature of the disability and the name, address, and telephone number of the attending physician. Holy crap! Like, seriously. How difficult do they make it to vote absentee in this county? You literally need a doctor's note to make sure to say that you can't vote on Election Day. Now, this is just ridiculous. It's literally ridiculous. I don't need, like, I can be gone from work for 3 days before I need a doctor's note saying I'm actually sick. But here, you have to, like, not only say I've got a physical disability, but you have to, like, put in, seriously. What people do to stop people from voting in convenient ways never ceases to amaze me. The absentee ballot application requires that the elector provide a, quote, post office address to which the ballot is to be mailed, unquote. The deadline for the receipt of applications is 5:00 p.m. on the Tuesday before the election. Absentee ballot applications are processed by the local Board of Elections to determine if the applicant possesses all the necessary qualifications. If the board is satisfied that the applicant is a qualified elector, the application is marked approve. If the board concludes that the applicant is not qualified, it must immediately notify the applicant. After approving an absentee ballot application, the Board of Elections is required to, quote, mail or deliver, unquote, an absentee ballot package to the elector at the address listed on the application. The absentee ballot package consists of an outer envelope in which there is enclosed a declaration envelope, an inner envelope, and instructions. And it is, like, super complicated to vote. You know, you need, like, 5 different pieces of paper. For me, I needed my ballot. I needed my declaration that with a witness, someone who watched me vote but didn't look at my ballot. Then I had an inside envelope, and then I had a piece of paper I had to wrap around the inside envelope. And all of that, my ballot, my declaration, and my envelope, and my secret, like my paper which actually said absentee ballot on it, and I had to tape it on the envelope so it looked like it was original, all went inside another envelope. The elector must mark the ballot in secret, seal the ballot in the inner envelope, seal the inner envelope in the declaration envelope, and execute the declaration on the declaration envelope. See, an elector may legally receive assistance in filling out the absentee ballot only if the elector has a physical disability that, quote, renders him unable to see or mark the ballot, unquote. The elector must then, quote, send by mail, unquote, or deliver, quote, in person, unquote, the executed declaration package to the Board of Elections. To be valid, all absentee ballots must be received by 5 p.m. on the Friday before the election. If an elector who sent in an absentee ballot becomes able to get to the polls on Election Day, the absentee ballot is void as a matter of law, and the elector has a duty to go to the polls and void the ballot. So not... Can you imagine that these were the laws that were written? Wow. You had to actually, like, if your plans changed and you've already voted and you sent it in, you would still then have to, like, go, oh, no, I'm actually here. Here, let's do the paperwork, void my original paperwork, and now I have a duty to present myself in person. That's amazing. All right, so I'm finding, I don't know what it is. I'm getting a little bit, it's winter time. Apologies for rubbing my nose in front of you all. Oh, wow. All right. So we go down here. We basically learn all this stuff about how absentee balloting works. And let's see. All right, yes. The district court findings, the finding of fact. So we're just going to kind of skip. You get a sense of how it's a whole rigmarole. And there's a lot of BS involved. And not only that, if you end up being in person the date, this was the old laws, because obviously now Pennsylvania has changed their laws because of the pandemic. I think most of this no longer applies because of how they did, the absentee ballot expansion of who was eligible to vote. And obviously, if you're in a pandemic you're voting absentee, you're not supposed to go anywhere, so clearly you could be. So you get what I mean. We're just going to skip all that. All right. Following a 3-day hearing during which extensive testimony was presented, the district court issued detailed findings of fact, which we now summarize. The Stinson campaign sent its workers into the divisions of the district where a majority of the residents were white to solicit voter registration applications and absentee ballot applications. The goal was to obtain 20 absentee ballot applications from each division. Those who expressed a hesitancy to register because they did not wish to go to a polling place were told by campaign workers that they could fill out an absentee ballot application and obtain an absentee ballot as a matter of convenience. Many improper applications were received based on this misrepresentation. These absentee ballot applications stated that the basis for voting absentee was that the applicant would be out of the county at the time of the election, despite the fact that the applicant had no reason to believe that this would be the case. To conceal the fact that many of these improper absentee ballot applications were solicited several months before the election day, Stinson campaign workers told canvassers not to fill in the true date on the application. The absentee ballots that the Stinson campaign obtained in this way were then submitted directly to Commissioner Tartaglioni's office, and the corresponding absentee ballot packages were provided directly to the Stinson campaign. According to the testimony of one campaign worker, Stinson was aware of the improper conduct regarding the absentee ballots, yet he permitted the conduct to continue and even admonished campaign workers who questioned its legality. Now you see the difference between what this is with like campaign workers coming forward and discussing how the stuff was done. Like you think if there was national voter fraud organized, not one person is going to come forward, not one complaint, not one suspicion was ever uttered anywhere. Again, irregularities and instances happen during every election. That doesn't mean that there is widespread systematic voter fraud that changed the outcome of the election. About 3 weeks before the election, the Stinson campaign learned that a Democratic state committee poll showed Marks running ahead of Stinson by 4 percentage points. The campaign responded by saturating the Hispanic and African American areas of the district with absentee ballot applications using similar tactics to those earlier employed. This time, however, campaign workers solicited absentee ballot applications in person and by telephone by telling the Latino and African American voters that there was, quote, a new way to vote, unquote, from the convenience of one's own home. Campaign workers were paid $1 for each application or ballot that they were able to obtain in this way, and the campaign dispensed at least $500 to $700 in this effort. Okay, again, like, if there was all this voter fraud being organized, who was getting paid for it? How were they all being set up? Like, what, everyone was donating their time for free? Where's the paper trail? I mean, this is very solid evidence. If you can link specific campaign expenditures and people say, I earned this amount and it totals up, that's pretty convincing. That's actual physical evidence, is more than allegations. The Stinson campaign obtained approximately 1,000 absentee ballot applications from the minority sections of the district. The applications were then delivered by Stinson's campaign workers directly to Commissioner Talmadge, and he provided the absentee ballots packages directly to the Stinson campaign. Which I agree, that's dodgy AF. And I think that there's really no reason why, if you're going to be requesting an absentee vote by mail, that it should not just be mailed directly to your house. I don't understand, like, why. Maybe it's legal for the campaigns to be the intermediaries, but at least from my perspective, and it's just totally, this is me. This is just totally me. You guys can think whatever you want. I think it's fine for campaigns to encourage people to apply for absentee ballots. I think it's part of their job is to inform them what their options are and to encourage turnout. I mean, that's kind of what a campaign is all about, getting people to vote. However, once they've assisted them by providing them with, say, information, forms, resources if they have any questions, or even helping to answer questions, or, you know, depending on whether or not they want to talk to a city official or if they want to talk to somebody on the campaign about, you know, who they trust, that's whatever, then, but the information can then go directly to the voter. And the campaign can follow up. Like, they can say, oh, did you get your voter packet in? You know, did you have a chance to cast your ballot? Did you put it in the mail? Did you put it in the secrecy envelope? But they don't need to physically deliver it. I think that point, in terms of actually delivering and posting it back, that should be on the voter. Yikes on trikes with spikes. All right. Oh yes, Stinson campaign workers then took the absentee ballots directly to the applicants' homes. In numerous instances, Stinson workers executed applications, ballots, and declarations without the voter understanding the nature of the document. In other instances, Stinson workers instructed the voter to check certain places on the ballot or filled out and forged the ballot. I don't know how much of this is all testimony, but it's in the court document, so I guess I found enough people to make these allegations, right? Voters were also assisted in completing applications and declaration packages after the statutory deadline for receipts by the board had passed, and such ballots were counted by the board. Many voters who cast absentee ballots testified that they were unaware that they had signed absentee ballot applications. Okay, well, that's where the evidence came from. Right. Almost 400 of the absentee ballot applications submitted by the Stinson campaign were rejected by the board because they came from unregistered voters. These rejected applications were returned directly to Commissioner Talmadge, who then returned them to a Stinson campaign worker. Contrary to state law, no record was kept of the rejected applications. They know this is all, like, this is documentation. This isn't just, I have an affidavit that says this person saw a food truck that was feeding people snacks and may have smuggled in votes, even though I never saw that. Commissioners Tart, Giloni, and Talmadge and the board employees working with them were aware that the absentee ballot campaign of Stinson and his workers, and assisted that campaign by delivering hundreds of absentee ballot packages directly to Stinson workers rather than mailing or delivering them to the electors whose names and addresses appeared on the applications. This assistance was designed to aid the Stinson campaign in obtaining more votes through personal contact between the electors and the Stinson campaign workers. No such assistance was provided to Marks or the Marks campaign. During regular office hours, employees of the board mailed all absentee ballot packages to the voters whose applications they had approved. The board's assistance to the Stinson campaign was covert and was not disclosed to the Republican Commissioner Kane at the time. See, hey, the lucky wanderer. Can you see now the difference between this and the Giuliani case? I mean, there is just like there is a paper trail. There is a testimony trail. There is a financial trail. There is a narrative here of like names and motivations and what the crime was. So this is what an actual like case looks like. They set everything up showing like, here's how they did it and here's where they went and here's exactly the laws that they violated. And here we have testimony of people who said that they didn't. So when we talk about voter fraud and, you know, when people like Sargon, for instance, say that there was a lot of voter fraud, there may have been, like, again, stipulated that in every election there are irregular situations. That doesn't mean that the election result is invalid. If we could never have a valid election result whenever there was any problem anywhere, we would never have election results. So I think it's incredibly disingenuous and hurtful to democracy. Like, it undermines democracy when you conflate the inevitable irregularities and aberrations that are going to happen when hundreds of millions of people vote and the actual democratic legitimacy of the outcome based on a popular turnout or popular will. And it, to me, if you're attacking this election as being fraudulent, you're really advancing an anti-democratic agenda. You aren't interested in protecting democracy because you don't know what the standards for protecting democracy are. You're not interested in the facts of the case. You're interested in advancing your propaganda to undermine a democratically elected leader. And while I did not enjoy the Trump presidency, and I had serious questions, I never called for like, hey, let's have a mass movement where we don't acknowledge Trump, his ability to exercise any powers in office. There was never like physical terrorist attacks because Trump was in office. There was never death threats made because, so it's one thing to say, look, I do think that the Russians interfered. And my way of handling that was we need to crack down on our election security, crack down on people like Facebook who profit from outside agitators funding the undermining of democratic, democracy. We need government regulation of that kind of activities like we have for any other forms of campaign spending and campaign law enforcement. We need to reform gerrymandering laws. We need to roll back voter suppression, make the vote easier because it's not unsecure. The woman who testified in Michigan was saying, in India, everyone has a national identification number. Yeah, Americans would never stand for that. All those gun types are like, I'm not going to get a national identification number. We have social security numbers, but anyway. Yeah, exactly. The violent left, and yet it's destroying democracy to own the libs. Absolutely. Absolutely. And therefore, I will continue to challenge people who pretend that they care about democracy when what they really want is to harness the legitimacy that democracy and a democratic vote result lends to maintain a one party, one ethnicity, one sort of a one gender. So basically, white supremacist patriarchal rule. And obviously from the right, if I need to specify that. That is the goal of the Republican Party, of Mitch McConnell, I think, and I've said this before. They want to cheat and make sure that the power that white men were given from the start of the Constitution and the power that they have benefited from holding on to, because disproportionately they were set up to win in that system. Now that they're actually getting, seniority and representation from women and people of color and women of color and non-binary people, they can't win at the ballot box, so they have to skew the game to keep hold of power. And that's evil. Okay. All right. So with that was, I just wanted to kind of follow up on the discussion of the third Court of Appeals decision, because as I said, without a frame of reference, it's difficult to know why their case is so bad. And I think just this little bit has helped a lot. Okay. All right. So I see people are having a conversation in the chat. I'm going to ignore that because it's, I don't want to change. I've got two subjects I wanted to talk about today. And the other one being my video. We're not going to look at it too much because it's got a copyright thing, so perhaps you might not be able to, let's see, my channel. Go to my channel. All right. So pause. All right. If you watched a trash movie, I don't even know if trash movies, if it got pulled down. Let's check Kevin's channel first. And Kevin. Come on. Oh, I must have. Normally comes up first, but. Oh no, it's okay. So it's still up from the looks of it. You can watch our Trash Movies episode. And The Winters. I like that. I didn't see that title before. That's funny. I wanted to talk a little bit about the actual re-editing of this process, because it was, for me, really, really super fascinating. Stinson seems like a D. I have absolutely no doubt that that Republican would be a jerk, but that's sort of irrelevant, or it's an exogenous factor to whether or not a crime was committed. That was kind of my point here. Oh, I know. I've got it here, the original. All right. Actually, you know what? Can we? I want to top up my coffee a bit and take a quick break. Can we? Let's have a little breaksies here. We'll just go 2 minutes, and then I will come back and we will discuss. Well, I mean, I will talk and you will listen, but we will discuss the exam. Like, am I cut off? It's hard for me to tell. No, it looks okay. All right, we're gonna discuss the original Frankenstein versus a space monster. What some of the flaws were in the narrative, some of the technical issues, and then how I went about changing it into a shorter version, which I think is, I've turned it into, as I said, it's a sarcastic kind of parody, and it reshapes the story to be a polyamorous sapiosexual relationship between a man, a woman, and a robot. That's my reading. That's how I'm reading Frankenstein versus a space monster. And I will tell you how I got to that after a short break. So yeah, let me just put on the music again, and we'll go from there. And see you guys in just like 2 or 3 minutes. Just enough time to like make a fresh cup of coffee and stretch my legs a bit. All right, be back in a few. Hey there, everyone. I am back, and you guys are having an interesting conversation about the warning signs of stroke in the chat. So that's, I mean, good. You know, that's important information for people to know. And it's very helpful. It's very important. It might save a life someday. So I'm all in favor of that. It's just kind of like random conversation to come back to. All right, let me move this a little bit. Ooh. Change transition. And yeah, let's talk a little bit about. So if you haven't seen it yet, you can go to my channel, main channel. Hey, Po Mama Sid. I did a parody cut, so it technically should be fair use, although it did get already a copyright claim. And I'm debating whether or not to fight it, because my understanding is, if you guys remember, Sargon took an original work from Aquila, actually. I think it was. I think I'm saying her name right. I apologize if I didn't. And didn't do anything really to it, just edited it in, without transforming it really, other than cutting it up and changing the title, and that was considered fair use. Now, parody under fair use is completely valid. I actually listed here. Parody is fair use of a copyrighted work when it is humorous form of social commentary and literary criticism in which one work imitates another. So my idea of this was, it's parody because the original movie was meant to be scary, and it was terrible. What was it? It was pretty terrible. And the parody part of it comes in that I'm changing it from a horror story to a love story. So I'm being ironic in terms of the reading of the exact same material, which to me I think would qualify as parody. And then in terms of literary criticism, my criticism is in the poor editing. And by actually doing effects and adding soundtrack, it's a commentary on how much editing and the role of the editor has changed and has become more demanding, and using a narrative sort of structure or a narrative grammar with music and visuals. So I think, honestly, that if Carl can just take a copyrighted piece of work and edit it a little bit and give it a new title, and that is copyright, or that's fair use, then clearly this should be as well. Whether or not I want to fight over it in court is the question, I guess, that I have to ask. Because in all honesty, I could see it. Well, maybe what I'll just do is make the content and have it constantly. Sorry, I'm going to move this and get centering myself. To take these, movies and maybe edit them down as a parody to be, like a different movie trailer than it was. I actually did a movie trailer version of this as well. That said, did you talk about the Ruby Freeman video out of Fulton County? No, I don't think we did. I don't know who that is. Well, that's all right, because No Race made the time to type that up before we move on to my movie commentary. I will look this up. I need an attorney. Talking about 50 million pallets or what? Ruby Freeman Instagram was taken. It's been taken down. This was not a parody account. What's this? An admission of election fraud by Ruby Freeman, Democrat. Voter counter said, I know for a fact that Georgia voted for Trump by the largest numbers, and if we didn't do what we did, he would have won Georgia. All right. I would say I'm a little bit skeptical of stuff that people write on Instagram, as there's a lot of false information out there. Who is John Filipino? Just some dude. Okay. Oh no, sorry, not Filipino. Filipovic. Sorry, I went to Filipov and then my brain went sideways. Yeah, conspiracy to commit election voter fraud. Who was described in Rudy Giuliani's surveillance video. Oh, that does remind me. this whole, there was a Washington Post thing. You know, they're saying about these, there are these suitcases, we saw it on video, and the suitcases, when the room was empty, they brought in these suitcases filled with votes that they'd stuff, and then blah blah blah. A parody account. Why can't people on the internet just be who they are instead of pretending to be someone else? Yeah. Bogus suitcase story rolls away from Fox News. Get it? Because suitcases are on wheels. Get it? Get it? Right. The edited is an annoying word. It's very consonant heavy. Edited. It was an edited version. The Trump campaign and its hangers-on have amassed a dismal record when it comes to accuracy in election fraud allegations. The campaign has filed dozens of lawsuits challenging one aspect or another of a swing state's balloting process, only to see them crumble on account of thin evidence and bad lawyering. One of its erstwhile attorneys, Sidney Powell, connected Hugo Chavez, the Venezuelan president who died in 2013, to the vote-flipping conspiracy. The Trump team have disavowed her. The video, the star exhibit on a Thursday hearing of the Georgia Senate, depicts activity in a Fulton County elections processing room at State Farm Arena in Atlanta. The narration, right. I'm going to do my professional voice. And the first thing I've noticed about doing professional reading is you have to slow down. You end up reading at a much slower pace than you would normally speak, but because it is a written word, people find that, I think, a bit easier to follow. So, let's start with that. The narration describes apocalyptic. The narration describes apocalyptic democracy subverting maneuvers. A woman with blonde braids sets up a black table at 8:22 a.m. on Election Day, says narrator Jackie Pick of the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and workers subsequently pull suitcases out from under the table. Quote, I saw 4 suitcases coming out from underneath the table, unquote, says Pick. Quote, so what are these ballots doing there, separate from all the other ballots? And why are they only counting them whenever the place is cleared out, with no witnesses, unquote? There were, quote, multiple, unquote, scanning machines at the site, continues Pick, calculating that there was enough volume to account for the margin of victory. Written word tends to be more dense, so slowing it down makes sense, Po Mama Sid says. Yeah, good point. There's more thought that's gone into a constructed sentence, so there might be more complicated clauses or different words used, or even like alliterations or other rhetorical techniques being placed. Carlson, a guy who famously pronounced himself skeptical of Powell's claims, laundered the suitcase story. Quote, we're going to show you a video you may have already seen today. It seems real. It's pretty unbelievable, said Carlson. After showing the video, Carlson riffed, quote, I mean, what the hell? We spent all day trying to find out exactly the context here. We reached out to officials in Fulton County, Georgia. They didn't answer any of our specific questions about this footage. We're going to keep pressing because, again, that's on tape. It's unbelievable. We know that fraud took place. We know ballots just kind of showed up in various places, unquote. Hannity bit even harder, quote, in Georgia, look at this new surveillance footage we'll be showing you. Mysterious suitcases potentially filled, we believe, with ballots rolled out from under a table after partisan election observers were asked to leave the room, unquote. And Ingram couldn't resist either, as she quoted Pick saying, quote, they will wait until the witnesses over there, the press and the observers leave the room. Then you will see them move into action and begin scanning ballots. Once everyone is gone, the coast is clear. They're going to pull the ballots out from underneath a table. Saw 4 suitcases coming out from underneath a table. Of course, the whole thing was being recorded on video, so when... Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable because it's not illegal. Anyone with a few years' experience in municipal management knows when you look to steal an election, you place the suitcases under the table. I think that was the author being a bit on the ironic side. A little bit sarcasm there. Of course, there's another explanation. One offered on Friday by Fulton County Director of Registration and Elections, Richard L. Barron. Quote, according to my staff, that's just normal, unquote, he said in a Friday meeting of the Fulton County Board of Registration and Elections. The room where those staffers were processing ballots wasn't big enough for all their equipment, plus the media, explained Barron. Okay, but what about booting the observers, as Hannity alleged? Quote, no one from my staff made any announcement for anyone to leave, unquote, said Barron. As to the conspiratorial thrill of calling the containers suitcases, quote, those are bins, unquote, said Barron. Gabriel Sterling, Georgia's voting system implementation manager, tweeted that the state investigators had watched hours of the video. Quote, shows normal balloting processing, unquote, he wrote. Francis Watson, chief investigator for the Georgia Secretary of State, said the black bins were standard for elections processing activities. As to why election officials were pulling out the bins late on the evening of November 3rd, they had stowed them away as they completed their work for the evening. Then they received orders to continue their work, so they grabbed the bins and scanned the ballots inside of them. The suitcase hatchet job is following the same arc as many Trump conspiracies at Fox News. Credulous, pro-Trump propaganda on the opinion hours, checked by actual reporting from the news side of the network. A story on FoxNews.com, for instance, details the refutations of top Georgia officials. Right below, embedded video of Hannity and the tagline, Hannity, new video shows suspicious activity in Nevada and Georgia. The juxtaposition yields a screenshot that encapsulates the central Trump-era conflict at Fox News. Yep. Yeah, so I think that kind of sums it up. Well, also here. You know something else? Neither Tucker Carlson nor Sean Hannity has the most minimal idea of what election fraud might look like on surveillance video. And they're not alone. We here at the Eric Wimple blog don't either, and we'll guess 99% of our peers in journalism share this ignorance. Elections are managed by local governments. They all have their procedures, their checklists, their technologies, their bureaucratic quirks, their standard operating procedures. Without knowing these procedures, it's pretty tough to identify a fraudulent department from them. Never underestimate guys like Carlson and Hannity, though. They are elections procedures hobbyists. They know a suitcase abetted fraud when they see it. No need to investigate much further. In a follow-up on his Friday night program, Carlson showcased that cockiness, caring not a whit about the presence of suitcases had been amply debunked. Quote, last night we showed you surveillance footage from inside the State Farm Arena in Atlanta on election night November 3rd. The tape appears to show poll workers retrieving suitcases full of ballots from underneath a table, and doing that well past midnight. Keep in mind, poll watchers were told to go home at around 10:30 p.m. What was that? It looks like fraud, so we asked. The answer, that this was normal balloting processing, didn't please Carlson. People interested in good government, said Carlson, should want to know more about the situation. Carlson himself read a number of such questions that, he said, were supplied by lawyers, quote, involved in the Trump legal effort, but any person who thought about it for 10 minutes could have come up with them, unquote. We're going to keep pressing till we find out. That was another quote. Good job, ace investigator Tucker Carlson, the same fellow who recently apologized for falsely claiming that a dead man voted in the same state. Questions, of course, are wonderful, but perhaps it would be best to collect all the answers before saying things like, it looks like fraud. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Eric Wimple. Eric Wimple, the Washington Post media critic, focuses on the cable news industry. Before joining the Post, he ran a short-lived and much-publicized local online news operation. Okay. All right, so, yeah, that was that. And, yeah, propaganda is a very, very dangerous threat to democracy. Especially the kind of state where we have now where people aren't even listening to both sides anymore. They just completely, like, on the right, they completely reject right-wing media or any mainstream media in favor of increasingly extreme right-wing media. And I know from my perspective as a left person, I don't see Fox as news. I don't see OAN as news. And so why would I take on their perspective? Now, I'm exposed to Republican thought because Republicans are still mainstreamed on the mainstream media, and they will have Mitt Romney on, and they'll put on Trump people, whatever else. But it's not a two-way street, certainly. All right. So let me just get back. I'm going to do a little, like I said, I'm just only going to be maybe 10 minutes long. Yeah, it's already been an hour. So I don't want to go too much longer than an hour. I'm also thinking a little bit about changing up my format for the first of the year, but I'm going to go on, I guess before we start, a couple things. One is, sorry, I feel like a coffee burp is going to come out, but the joys of having a live show. I want to retool a little bit. I know I've been talking about this. I want to make the show a little bit snappier so I can cut it up into some shorter segments, and I want to like spend some time over my break coming up with like a little way to pull sections out of the show and do a bit more prep. So rather than doing one long thing for a half hour, I want to prep things so they're more like 10-minute segments moving forward. We'll see if that happens. It's an idea. The other idea that I had today was, I realized, well, with holidays coming up, a lot of people have a lot of December holidays, and one of the holidays I have always hated has been New Year, because it's so boring. You wait around, for me at least, you wait around all day to do this countdown, and then like 10 minutes after it's done, it's like a 15-minute holiday. It's like the 5 minutes, well, maybe, 5 minutes before, when you all like put on your hats and you get out your champagne and you wait for the countdown, and then you do the countdown, and then you drink up and you're like, oh God, like, what am I going to do now for the next, like, let's just go home. I'm thinking about doing a day-long one-shot in D&D. If anyone is ever, like, if you are slightly interested in participating, what I thought about doing for the New Year's Day one is, because people I know have New Year's across the globe, and of course for the actual like countdown New Year's part, you would want to be probably with friends or family. Normally I would go out on New Year's Eve and go into the streets and set off fireworks, or go over to a friend's house and then we'd all go downstairs and watch other people drunkenly set off fireworks, because that's what we do in Cologne. But, this year I'm not going to be doing that. So I thought if we had kind of like a fun one-off, really long, like 12 hours of, it's only, New Year's is only fun as incidental to a party at a good friend's house. Exactly. Absolutely, exactly. So if I did like a 12-hour campaign, people could dip in and out. And if I made the narrative in such a way that you could just like sort of come across a character as they come online, and they would join the party, and some people could play for 4 hours, and then they might have things to do, or it's an hour before New Year's, so they're going to go be with their partner or be with their family or whatever and do their New Year's thing, and then come back if they wanted to afterwards. So it's more like a dip in and out kind of adventure, and I would set it up to run it and then give myself some breaks. So, Trans Gamer Girl's already in. All right, one person already. And for those of you who haven't ever played before and you want to just try a one-shot, you can get in touch with me, and we'll do a session where we help set up your character and we get you all set up for the game. So I was thinking about doing that because I hate New Year's. It really is like the least favorite of my holidays, and this would be a much more fun way to spend it. All right. So that said, let me just quickly explain. Frankenstein meets a space monster has a couple of primary flaws, in my opinion. The first is that there is no one who is likable. I mean, even if Kevin has a reading of Frankenstein as a more sympathetic monster who kills the cold, rational, scientific men who created him, but have a more protective and soft spot emotional connection with the woman scientist who sees him more as a person rather than just a machine. However, I feel, and I don't think Kevin would disagree with this, but I feel that narrative is undermined in the original movie by having Frankenstein just kill people. Like, I'm just going to expand my space a little. I've got any more space to talk. And so when you're watching the narrative, if you're watching the movie unfold, Frank ends up, I think, killing at least one, possibly two people. So and even though he has this act of self-sacrifice at the end, his motivation, his emotional connection to do this is unclear, because it's set up earlier in the movie that he has a self-preservation program or feature or component or whatever in their 1960s yeah oh, but oh, Sib Wolf. Yeah, okay, you're in, we got 2 already. I've spent the night comforting your dog. DN fan, you can join, and then when it gets to be time in your time zone, then you can just like disappear for an hour and comfort your dog and then come back. So this is it. It's like, it's not meant to be, because it's going to be running for like 12 hours. It's going to be like a series of different time zones having New Year's, and we can kind of like maybe find a way of incorporating that into the game. Like there's something has to be done by every hour, otherwise something blows up. I just made that up, but that could be super fun. It would be a way to kind of keep people aware of where the time zones are by giving time limits on things, but without so that could be fun. All right, anyway. Need to name the monster. I vote for Lazarus. Yes. Well, his name is Frank something or other in the movie, because he's supposed to be a person. They've given him like an identity. So if you watch the original here on Mason Stafford's channel, you can see how the whole terrible movie. All right, so narratively, I felt like one thing that needed to happen in the movie was for you to care about somebody. And the primary obstacle I identified as the editor in this was the fact that Frank kills people. If you take out Frank killing people, he ends up being far more sympathetic. The question, and then it kind of occurred to me that the most emotionally connected moments in the film were between Adam, Karen, and Frank. And I kind of thought, like rather than doing a traditional thing and making it's very difficult with the film footage I had to work with to make it like Frank loves Karen. And that also is just such a trope. And I think it was more interesting to kind of like make all 3 of them be a unit in a relationship, because that was like when they were at their happiest, when they were still dreaming of the future, they were solving problems, and Frank was becoming real to Karen. So that was why I associated that love theme, with the times that they are the 3 of them together. And if you watch my parody cut, the music is pretty much played in the first instance when you see them in the lab. And then when the general walks in, the music fades, because it's sort of like the effect is gone. And then the other times I link it to Frank wandering alone. So rather than Frank going around killing people, I edited it to make him like searching out that love again. He, was blown up. He's now wandering. And the thing that is calling him home is this connection. He's trying to find his way back to Karen and Adam. And they too, when they're out looking for him or we're talking about him, are also recalling back to that love music theme. And the high point emotionally then, in my version of it, comes right in the middle, when they're back at the cave, and even though Frank is damaged, Adam and Karen are together with Frank, and they're fixing him, and it was just like old times. And then when Karen leaves and gets on the motorcycle, that's the end. That's the end of the happiness in the movie. From there on, it's a tragic down story. They love the Vespa better than each other. Yeah, there's not a lot of sexual tension between Karen and Adam. There's just not a lot going on there. So when it came to cutting out the footage, what I did primarily in terms of the narrative was to really play up this idea of that specialness of the 3 of them together, and to take out the murders so that Frank actually becomes a more sympathetic character. The other challenge of the movie in getting it down to like under 50% was just like how much stock footage there was. And there's a lot of narrative done over the stock footage. So one thing I had to really do to get it down was to watch it through and figure out, okay, what exposition dumps are absolutely necessary, and then within the necessary exposition dumps, what information is necessary. So a lot of the editing was about contracting longer scenes of exposition down and really thinking, okay, well, how much of this is relevant for later on? A lot of their dialogue was things like, put the men in the pressurized spacesuits. Like, well, we don't need to have that described to us because we have the grammar for what a spacesuit looks like. And when we see someone come out of a spaceship with a spacesuit, we're not surprised. There are a lot of things about that I could edit out and really reduce the dialogue in as much as possible to things that the viewer needed to know in order for the story to move forward. Then there's what else is the music. There's a lot of bad music, and sometimes I was able to work around the existing soundtrack. Other times I had to put in music and override the existing soundtrack. So one place where I do that in my parody cut specifically is in the scene where I reduced down the scene of this girl being kidnapped from the beach. No, that's not the right beach scene. This one. In the original movie, this scene goes on for freaking ever and ever and ever. And when I took the music out, I noticed that the sound of the waves was gone. So I had to go back and find a section of the movie that had the sound of the waves, clip that, and then drop that into the file underneath it, and replicate the sound of the waves so that it didn't feel so much like all of the sound was dropping out from the movie. So even those little things of keeping the sound continuity is less abrupt for someone watching it. And you don't notice, like if you watched it and you would go, oh, I can still hear waves, you wouldn't notice that from watching it. But if you saw waves and you didn't hear them, that would stand out to you as slightly weird. So there are all these little tricks about sound continuity and atmosphere that I learned as a process, through the process of doing it. And then the last thing too is also just cutting up the stock footage in a way that was more exciting. One of my favorite bits actually was cutting up the timing of this part where it's all stock footage and trying to cut on some of the beats of the music. So that was it didn't happen always by accident. Sometimes there were happy accidents that I found and I left in. But here I was very consciously dropping in music and then picking out from the overall shot stock footage that they had included which ones I needed to move the narrative along. For instance, the guy gets into, well, here it's supposed to be a space van, but you don't know that. It's a door, right? And so that's all you really need is a door. And once he's in there, you can show him going up to the elevator. Right? You don't need to watch him being delivered to the elevator. Once he's in the elevator, you don't need to show him being walking over to the capsule. You can just show him being sliding into it. So that kind of just using the power of the visuals for you to follow along with what is happening without actually spending very much time. You get a flash of this, a flash of that. It is a typical sort of montage effect. And also the countdown in the movie goes on for freaking ever. So I, again, just took out the most exciting part of it, which is one little thing to orient the viewer, and then do the countdown. Just get to the countdown. We don't need to hear all of that stuff. And there's a horrible screeching noise. That's in the original video. There's nothing I could do about that. What else? So yeah, it was a challenge to work around the original soundtrack, deciding when I would work with it. In other words, when would I edit out things that took advantage of the existing soundtrack, or when did I strip out the sounds and recreate it in order to be more free with what I could do on screen. And one of the more challenging areas of this, so the example of the cutting down this kidnapping scene here by using just wave sounds and music, I had another opportunity to really work in a way that, experimentally, shall we say, when it came to the pool party. Now, where is the pool party scene? I'm trying to find the pool party. I think, oh yeah, here's the pool party scene. All right. What was difficult here is that in the original film, they had created the effect that the sound would change. It would sound more like a radio when it was being played at the party than when it was being played over the space people, the spacemen running. And so I tried to create that. That was actually probably one of the more complicated things I did musically in the reworking. Was I just downloaded the song as it played on the original, and then stripped out pretty much all of the sound of the parts that I had clipped together to be a faster montage of moving, and then overlaid the entire song, and then split it up. Whenever we cut to the pool party scene, I would make a cut in the audio and make it a radio sound effect and then bring it back. So you get this impression that you get the more pure, like the less radio sound when you're with the baddies. You get the radio sound at the party, and then the two to come together when you get both the radio sound at the party and the baddies are there. And that to me was like representing the fact that they had arrived at the party. So yeah, lots of really geeky little things that you can do when you are editing a film. And for me, it was a very interesting exercise because I always work with my own, like raw video I've created on my own. And so when I shoot or when I record, in my mind already, I have an idea of what I want to go there, and I leave myself a lot of flexibility if I want to throw in some music or, put something else up. In this case, I really had to kind of first start with what was there and carve away at the existing film structure to get it down to the polyamorous open relationship, sapiosexual open relationship that was going on between Frankenstein, Frank, Karen, and Adam. And there was another point I was going to make. I can't remember what it was now. But yeah, it was a very good exercise in understanding. Oh, this was it. The first time I did it, I did an edit and added music. I made classic mistake of overproducing. I threw music on top of every open, empty space of dialogue. And watching it back, I realized that I'd made things more emotionally confused because the music that I was throwing in was maybe suitable for the situation, but it changed over the course of the movie. So there was no musical themes that recurred. It was just new mood music. And then it twigged in my head, okay, I need a love theme. I need a love theme so that I can set this up and show people, rather than being a horror movie, this is a love story. And then I need to consistently associate certain types of music with the baddies or the goodies in order to foreshadow and emotionally prepare people for what is coming up. So, a lot of times when you get the princess and Dr. Nadir, right before they're going to talk about a nefarious plan, I would let it be empty and silence, right? Just let the exposition take up that space. But as things moved into their dastardly plans, that's when I would bring up the sort of more ominous music to sort of set the scene there. Also cut out a lot of when she's got the woman that she's looking at, it's like, turn around and put your arms up. She's like, might as well just check her teeth. And the purification process too. Those just didn't need as much. They didn't need as much screen time to be menacing. And I think the musical choice there, my intention was to make them seem far more nefarious than they seemed in the original. Should I download the audio of this letter? Well, I'm actually finishing up. So if I would say, if you want to get the most out of this, if you haven't watched Frankenstein Meets a Space Monster yet, which I do provide in the link, what I would say is watch mine first. Go ahead and watch the parody retelling of this space horror movie into a love story. And then when you sit through the painfully long, tedious, boring original that I had to work with, how I changed it will make a lot more sense. All right, I think that's going to be it for today. I am going to, I think that's more on the sound design they had back in 65. Absolutely. And that's the other thing about this is that I've edited this to be sarcastic. This entire editing process is completely sarcastic. If you listen to the music and go, is this sarcasm? Is Christy being sarcastic with this music? Yes. The answer is always yes. I'm always sarcastic about my musical choices. And there's just a modern aesthetic. The other thing that I did fix is there are so many times where they would be like this in the frame. And it's very difficult to... I used my tablet to do the editing for this. It's all just done on my tablet in Power Director. But it's very difficult on the tablet to like get the exact frame splits. And it ends up being a lot more work to do that. So occasionally I will have, in the longer exposition scenes, I will have shrunk things down so that they're more like this than like this. So, all right. D&D tonight over on D&D with Christy. And yes, if I've got 2 people interested already, possibly in just a drop-in marathon session of D&D for New Year's Eve, because New Year's Eve just is a boring holiday. So let's play New Year's D&D or something like that. We'll have to like get some alliterative or rhyming scheme. So yeah, my game's going to be over on my channel at 7 o'clock tonight if you want to check that out. Otherwise, I think that's going to be it, guys. So I have been Christy. You have been awesome. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I will see you back here next Sunday, but I'll probably see you on a happy hour before then. So yes, thank you to everyone in the chat, Haruka and Sean, Lonely Wolf, Rory Katz, Sib Wolf, DN Fan, those of you who stopped by and commented, and those of you who stopped by and didn't comment. Thank you very much for stopping by. Until next Sunday, y'all, be well, be safe. I've been Christy. You've been awesome. Have an absolutely wonderful day, and I'm going to continue to stall for time while I find the end the stream button. Okay, I found it. Catch you guys later. Bye-bye.